When the millionaire threw her out of the house, she didn't even have money for the baby's clothes. In an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, two young women looked at each other knowingly as they swept the halls. Sophia, 18, with her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and her green eyes full of determination, smiled shyly at Alfred, a tall, athletically built 20-year-old. "Have you thought about what we're going to do when we get out of here?" asked Sophia quietly, making sure none of the nuns who ran the orphanage could hear her. Alfred approached her, pretending to pick something up off the floor. "We'll get married," he whispered with a mischievous smile. "We'll have our own family and never be alone again." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Although they had grown up together in the orphanage, her feelings for Alfred had blossomed in recent years. The idea of a future together, away from the grey walls and strict routines, seemed like a dream come true. 2 months later, in a small civil ceremony, Sophia and Alfred became husband and wife. With the little savings they had, they rented a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood in the city. Sophia got a job as a waitress in a nearby cafeteria, while Alfred did odd jobs in construction. The first few months were difficult but happy. Every night, when Sophia returned exhausted from her shift, she found Alfred waiting for her with a simple dinner and a warm smile. Together they dreamed of a better future, a house of their own, and perhaps one day children. One spring morning, Sophia woke up feeling nauseous. At first, she attributed it to accumulated fatigue, but when the symptoms persisted, a suspicion began to grow in her mind. With trembling hands, she took a pregnancy test in the small bathroom of the apartment. When she saw the 2 pink lines appear on the test, Sophia felt a mixture of joy and fear. How would Alfred react? Could they afford to have a baby with their precarious financial situation? That night, when Alfred arrived home, Sophia was waiting for him sitting on the worn couch they had bought at a thrift store. "Alfred, we need to talk," Sophia said, her voice trembling. He sat down next to her, frowning with concern. "What's wrong, mi amor? Is everything all right?" Sophia took a deep breath and looked into the eyes of the man she loved. "I'm pregnant," she finally blurted out. Alfred's face went through a series of emotions in a matter of seconds: surprise, confusion, and finally overflowing joy. He took Sophia in his arms and lifted her up, turning with her in the small living room. "We're going to be parents," he exclaimed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Oh, Sophia, this is the happiest day of my life." Sophia relaxed in his arms, relieved by his reaction. "But how are we going to manage?" she asked, still worried. Alfred kissed her gently. "We'll find a way," he promised. "I'll work harder. We'll save every penny. Our baby will have everything we didn't." The next few months were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Sophia quit her job at the cafeteria as her pregnancy progressed, and Alfred took extra shifts at the construction site. Despite the difficulties, both were full of excitement. One night, as Sophia was decorating the small room that would be the baby's room, she heard the front door burst open. Alfred rushed in, waving a piece of paper in his hand. "Sophia, you're not going to believe it," he shouted, his eyes shining with excitement. "I've won the lottery." Sophia dropped the paintbrush she was holding, smearing the floor with pink paint. "What? Are you kidding me?" Alfred hugged her, lifting her off the floor, careful not to press on her bulging belly. "It's not a joke, it's 500,000 pesos. Our life is going to change forever." That night, lying in their bed, Sophia and Alfred made plans for the future. They would buy a house, open a business of their own, and their baby would have the best opportunities in life. "We'll never have to worry about money again," Alfred said, caressing Sophia's belly. "Our baby will have everything he or she wants." Sophia smiled, but a small twinge of unease lodged in her heart. Something in Alfred's voice, in the way his eyes glittered as he talked about money, made her uncomfortable. But she quickly pushed those thoughts away, convincing herself that it was just pregnancy fatigue. 2 weeks later, on a hot summer afternoon, Sophia felt her first contractions. Alfred took her to the hospital, where after hours of labor, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl they named Isabella. As Sophia held her daughter in her arms, with Alfred by her side, she felt her heart overflowing with love. "She's perfect," she whispered, kissing the little girl's forehead. Alfred nodded, but his gaze seemed distant. "Yes, she is," he said, but his voice lacked the emotion Sophia expected. The next few days were a whirlwind of diapers, bottles, and sleepless nights. Sophia was exhausted but happy, falling more and more in love with her little Isabella with each passing day. Alfred, on the other hand, seemed increasingly distant. He would spend long hours away from home, claiming he was looking for the perfect house for his new life or researching business opportunities. One morning, when Isabella was just 3 weeks old, Sophia woke up to find a note on the bedside table. With her heart pounding, she unfolded it and read the words that would change her life forever. "Sophia, I'm sorry, but I can't do this. The responsibility of being a father is too much for me. I'm going to find my own happiness. The lottery money is in my account, so don't worry about it. Take care of Isabella, Alfred." Sophia felt the world crumbling around her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she hugged Isabella, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib, oblivious to her mother's pain. At that moment, Sophia did not know that her life was about to take an unexpected turn, and that fate had surprises in store for her that she could not even imagine. The days following Alfred's departure were hell for Sophia. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, mechanically attending to Isabella's needs, but feeling empty inside. Nights were the worst, when the silence amplified the echo of her loneliness, and her thoughts never stopped spinning. A week after Alfred's disappearance, Sophia received another devastating piece of news. When she tried to access the bank account she shared with her husband, she discovered it was empty. Alfred had taken all the lottery money. Sitting on the kitchen floor with Isabella asleep in her arms, Sophia cried until she had no more tears left. Not only had she lost her husband, but now she faced a future of poverty and uncertainty. It was at that moment of despair that she heard a soft knock on the door. Wiping away her tears, Sophia struggled to her feet and opened the door. In the hallway stood Peter, the tenant of the apartment next door. He was a man of about 35, with a kindly appearance and warm eyes. Sophia had met him a couple of times since they had moved in, but they had never spoken beyond a simple greeting. "Pardon the intrusion, Mrs. Sophia," Peter said in a soft voice. "I've noticed that things seem difficult lately and, well, I was wondering if I could help in any way." Sophia was about to refuse the offer, her pride fighting against her despair, when Isabella began to cry. The reality of her situation hit her hard. I don't know what to do," Sophia confessed, her voice breaking. "My husband is gone, he took all the money, and I have nothing for Isabella." Peter looked at her with compassion. "Let me help," he said softly. "I have some extra food and diapers I can share, and if you need to talk, I'm here to listen." In the days that followed, Peter became an invaluable support to Sophia. He would bring her food, watch Isabella while she tried to get her thoughts in order, and offer words of encouragement when the weight of her situation threatened to crush her. One afternoon, as Sophia was feeding Isabella, Peter appeared at her door with a mysterious smile. "I have a surprise for you," he said, leading her to the door of his own apartment. There, in the hallway, was a used but well-maintained baby stroller. "I saw it at a garage sale," Peter explained. "I thought it might come in handy for Isabella." Sophia felt tears come to her eyes again, but this time of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, patting the stroller. "No need," Peter replied with a gentle smile. "We all need help sometimes." That night, after putting Isabella to bed, Sophia examined the stroller more closely. As she did so, she noticed something strange about the seat lining. There was an unnatural-looking bulge. Curious, she unbuttoned the lining and reached into the padding. Her fingers touched something that rustled. Heart racing, Sophia pulled out a thick envelope. When she opened it, she almost fainted from shock. The envelope was stuffed with bills, an amount she quickly calculated at over 100,000 pesos. Sophia froze, staring at the money with a mixture of shock and confusion. Where had it come from? Had Peter? No, it was impossible. He couldn't afford to give away that much money. But then who could? With trembling hands, Sophia put the money back in the envelope and hid it in a drawer. Her mind was spinning, trying to understand what had just happened. On the one hand, that money could solve many of her immediate problems. On the other, he couldn't help but feel that accepting it would be wrong somehow. He stayed up all night, torn between necessity and ethics. As the sun began to peek through the window, Sophia had made a decision. She would use a small portion of the money to cover her and Isabella's most urgent needs, but she would keep the rest. Hopefully someday she would find out where it came from and be able to return it. With this resolution, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since Alfred's departure, she glimpsed a glimmer of hope for her future. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Sophia paid the back rent, bought supplies for Isabella, and even indulged in a little grocery shopping. Every time she used some of the mystery money, she felt a pang of guilt, but reminded herself that it was for her daughter's sake. Peter continued to be a constant and comforting presence in her life. Although Sophia burned with the desire to ask him about the money, something was holding her back. She feared that if she mentioned the find, it would somehow break the spell of good fortune that seemed to have settled on her. One afternoon, while walking Isabella in the stroller in the nearby park, Sophia ran into a former classmate from the orphanage, Maria. "Sophia, what a surprise to see you," exclaimed Maria, hugging her. "And who is this cutie?" Sophia proudly introduced Isabella, but when Maria asked about Alfred, she felt the pain once again worm its way back into her heart. "Alfred, he left us," Sophia said, struggling to keep her composure. "He left a few weeks ago." Maria looked at her sympathetically. "Oh, Sophia, I'm so sorry, but look at you, you're coming through. You were always the strongest of all of us at the orphanage." Those words sparked something in Sophia. Yes, she had been strong then, and she could be strong now. She had Isabella, she had Peter's support, and though she didn't understand how, she had the means to start over. With a new determination burning inside her, Sophia decided it was time to take charge of her life. The mystery money had given her a break, but she knew she couldn't depend on it forever. She needed to find a way to support herself and Isabella in the long run. One morning, as she flipped through the local newspaper looking for job openings, an ad caught her eye. Administrative assistant wanted in technology company. No previous experience required, just a desire to learn and grow. Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. Although she had never worked in an office before, she had always been organized and a quick learner. Maybe this was the opportunity she needed. With trembling hands, she dialed the number in the ad. After a brief phone conversation, she was able to schedule an interview for the following week. The days leading up to the interview were a whirlwind of nerves and preparations. Sophia spent hours practicing possible questions in front of the mirror, while Peter kindly took care of Isabella. "You'll do great," Peter assured her the night before the interview. "You're smart and capable. Any company would be lucky to have you." His words of encouragement gave Sophia the confidence she needed. The next morning, dressed in a simple but elegant suit she had purchased with some of the mystery money, Sophia kissed Isabella, thanked Peter, and headed off to the interview. The company building was imposing, all glass and steel. Sophia took a deep breath before entering, reminding herself of everything she had overcome so far. If she could survive Alfred's abandonment and raise her daughter on her own, she could certainly handle a job interview. To her surprise, the interview went better than she expected. The interviewer, a middle-aged man named Charles, was kind and understanding when Sophia explained her situation. "We all deserve a second chance," Charles said with a warm smile. "And I can see that you have determination and a willingness to learn. That's more valuable than any previous experience." 2 days later, Sophia got the call that would change her life. She had gotten the job. Tears of joy streamed down her cheeks as she hugged Isabella, who gurgled happily, oblivious to her mother's excitement. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Sophia had to arrange for Isabella's care while she worked, but Peter generously offered to help. "It's the least I can do," he insisted when Sophia tried to pay him. The work proved challenging but rewarding. Sophia immersed herself in learning new skills, from using office software to project management. Each day she felt more confident and capable. As the months passed, Sophia began to build a new life for herself and Isabella. She rented a bigger apartment in a better neighborhood, opened a savings account, and even allowed herself some small luxuries, like swimming lessons for Isabella on weekends. The mystery money from the stroller remained mostly untouched, kept in a safe deposit box at the bank. Sophia still wondered where it had come from, but over time, the mystery took a back seat in her mind, overshadowed by the demands and joys of her new life. One afternoon, Almost 2 years after starting at the company, Sophia was called into her boss's office. Heart racing, she walked in, wondering if she had made a mistake. "Sophia, please take a seat," said Charles, her boss, with a serious expression that made Sophia's stomach cringe with worry. "Is there a problem?" she asked, trying to remain calm. Charles stared at her for a moment before a smile spread across his face. "On the contrary, Sophia, we are very impressed with your work. So much, in fact, that we want to offer you a promotion." Sophia blinked, surprised. "A promotion?" "Yes, to junior project manager. It will come with a significant salary increase and more responsibilities, of course. What do you say?" Tears threatened to spill from Sophia's eyes, but she held them back. "I say yes, of course. Thank you so much for this opportunity." That night, Sophia celebrated with a small party at her apartment. Peter was there, of course, along with some co-workers who had become friends. As she watched Isabella, now a vivacious, almost 3-year-old, play with the party balloons, Sophia felt a surge of gratitude and pride. She had gone from a frightened, neglected young girl to a strong, independent woman. She had a job she loved, a beautiful and healthy daughter, and supportive friends. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Yet, as she watched Peter play with Isabella, she felt a pang of something she couldn't identify. Nostalgia? Longing? He shook his head, dismissing the feeling. Now was not the time to complicate things. She had to concentrate on her new position and raising Isabella. What Sophia didn't know was that fate had other plans, plans that would involve Peter in a way she could never have imagined, and that would unearth secrets from the past that would change her life forever. The years flew by for Sophia. Isabella grew into an intelligent and curious child, her mother's pride and joy. At work, Sophia continued to rise through the ranks, earning the respect of her colleagues and superiors alike. Peter remained a constant presence in their lives, always ready to help with Isabella, or offer a word of encouragement when Sophia needed it. Over time, he had become a father figure to Isabella, something that filled Sophia with gratitude, but also a strange melancholy she could not explain. One summer afternoon, when Isabella was already 7 years old, Sophia received a call that chilled her to the bone. It was from the bank, informing her that someone had tried to access her safety deposit box, where she kept the mysterious money from the stroller. With her heart racing, Sophia rushed to the bank. After verifying that the contents of the box were intact, the manager showed her the security footage of the attempted break-in. Sophia felt the world stop when she saw the face on the screen. It was Alfred. "Do you know this man?" the manager asked. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. What was Alfred doing back? How did he know about the money? The questions swirled in her mind, mixed with an anger she thought she had long since overcome. That night, after putting Isabella to bed, Sophia sat in the kitchen trying to put her thoughts in order. A soft knock on the door startled her. It was Peter with a worried expression on his face. "I saw you come in upset this afternoon," he said. "Is everything all right?" Before she knew it, Sophia found herself telling him everything. Alfred's abandonment, the mysterious money, and now her attempted robbery. Peter listened to her in silence, his face a mask of restrained emotions. When Sophia finished, he took a deep breath. "Sophia," he said in a trembling voice, "there is something I must confess to you." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. What more surprises did this day hold for her? The money in the stroller. "It was me who put it there," Peter said. Sophia stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. "You? But how? Why?" Peter ran a hand through his hair, visibly nervous. "When I saw you so desperate after Alfred left you, I couldn't stand it. I had some savings and, well, I decided to help you the only way I could think of." "But why didn't you tell me?" asked Sophia, her voice barely a whisper. "I was afraid," Peter admitted. "Afraid you'd think I had other intentions, that you'd refuse help." And then, over time, it became harder and harder to tell the truth. Sophia was silent, trying to come to terms with this revelation. On the one hand, she felt betrayed by the deception. On the other, a wave of gratitude washed over her, as she thought of all that Peter had done for her and Isabella over the years. "There's something else," Peter continued, his voice now barely audible. "The reason I wanted to help you. Sophia, I fell in love with you from the moment I saw you." This confession hit Sophia like a bolt of lightning. Suddenly all the little gestures, the looks, the moments shared over the years took on new meaning. "Peter, Sophia began, but he gently interrupted her. "You don't have to say anything now," he said. "I know it's a lot to process. I just wanted you to know the truth, especially now that Alfred has reappeared." Sophia nodded, grateful for the space Peter was giving her. "Thank you for telling me," she managed to say. After Peter left, Sophia spent the night awake, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and thoughts. Alfred's reappearance, Peter's revelation, her own confused feelings, all blended together in a chaos that threatened to overwhelm her. The next morning, exhausted but determined, Sophia made a decision. It was time to face her past, once and for all. Only then could she move forward into the future, whatever it might be. With trembling hands, she dialed her lawyer's number. It was time to locate Alfred and put an end to this situation once and for all. As she waited for them to respond, Sophia looked at the photo of Isabella on her desk and was filled with determination. What she didn't know was that this decision would trigger a series of events that would change her life and the lives of everyone around her in ways she could never have imagined. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity for Sophia. Her lawyer, an efficient man named Ramon, set to work to locate Alfred. Meanwhile, Sophia was torn between anxiety about confronting her ex-husband and confusion over her feelings for Peter. A week after Peter's revelation, Sophia received a call from Ramon. "We found him," the lawyer said without preamble. "Alfred is living in the next town over. Do you want me to arrange a meeting?" Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. "Yes," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "It's time to put an end to this." The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at a neutral cafe. Sophia spent the previous days in a constant state of nervousness. Peter, despite the awkwardness that now existed between them, offered to watch Isabella during the meeting. When the day arrived, Sophia walked into the cafe on shaky legs. And there he was, sitting at a table in the back, looking older and more tired than she remembered. "Hello, Sophia," Alfred said when she sat down across from him. His voice was low, almost embarrassed. "Alfred," Sophia replied coldly, "why did you try to steal the money from my safe deposit box?" Alfred looked down. "I lost everything, Sophia, the lottery money, everything. I thought maybe you had saved something." Sophia looked at him incredulously. "You lost 500,000 pesos? How?" "Bad investments, gambling." "I was an idiot, Sophia. I know that now." For a moment, Sophia felt sorry for him, but then she remembered how he had abandoned her and her newborn daughter. "And what did you hope to accomplish by coming back now?" she asked. Alfred looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and hope. "I wanted to apologize, to see if there was any chance of making things right." Sophia felt the anger take hold of her. Make things right? After 7 years? After abandoning us penniless? "I know what I did is unforgivable," Alfred said. "But I've changed, Sophia. I've been in therapy. I've quit gambling. I want to be a part of Isabella's life if you'll let me." Sophia was silent for a moment, processing his words. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to tell him he had no right to come back into their lives after so long. But another part, the part that remembered the young man she had fallen in love with at the orphanage, hesitated. "Isabella has a father," Sophia finally said. "Peter has been there for her from the beginning." Alfred looked surprised. "Peter? Your neighbor?" Sophia nodded. "He's been more of a father to Isabella than you ever were." An awkward silence settled between them. Alfred seemed to be struggling with his emotions, while Sophia watched him, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the young man she once loved. "I understand," Alfred finally said. "I didn't expect things to be easy. But Sophia, don't you think Isabella deserves to meet her biological father?" Sophia felt a pang of guilt. It was true that she had never told Isabella the whole truth about her father. He had always evaded the subject, saying he had left when she was very young. "I need time to think," Sophia said. "This isn't just about you or me. Isabella is the most important thing, and I have to consider what's best for her." Alfred nodded, a mixture of disappointment and understanding on his face. "I understand. Take as much time as you need." I'll be here when you're ready to talk again. Sophia stood up, feeling emotionally drained. Goodbye, Alfred, she said, and left the cafe without looking back. As she walked down the street, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Should she give Alfred a chance to be a part of Isabella's life? How would this affect her relationship with Peter? And what about her own confused feelings for both men? When she arrived home, she found Peter and Isabella playing happily in the living room. The domestic scene hit her hard, reminding her of all that Peter had done for them over the years. "Mommy," cried Isabella, running to hug her. "Can we go to the park with Peter tomorrow?" Sophia looked at Peter, who returned her gaze with a mixture of concern and affection. At that moment, she made a decision. "Honey," Sophia said, bending down to be at Isabella's level, "there's something important I need to tell you." That night, after Isabella went to sleep, Sophia and Peter sat in the kitchen, cups of steaming tea in front of them. "I told her about Alfred," Sophia said quietly. "I told her he's her biological father and that he wants to meet her." Peter nodded slowly. "How did she take it?" She was confused, a little upset, but also curious. Sophia paused, looking at Peter intently. "I also told her that you've been her real father all these years." Peter's eyes filled with tears. "Sophia, No, let me finish," Sophia interrupted softly. "Peter, I've been thinking a lot since your confession. About you, about us, about everything you've done for Isabella and me." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I've come to realize that I love you. Maybe I have for a long time, but I was afraid to admit it." Peter looked at her with wonder and hope. "Sophia, I love you too, more than you can imagine." They looked at each other for a long moment, years of unspoken emotions flowing between them. Slowly, Peter leaned forward, and Sophia closed her eyes, their lips meeting in a soft kiss full of promise. When they broke apart, Sophia felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time in a long time, she saw a clear, bright future ahead of her. "What will happen with Alfred?" asked Peter after a moment. Sophia sighed. "I will allow him to be a part of Isabella's life if she wants him, but you are her father in every way that matters, Peter. That's not going to change." Peter smiled, squeezing Sophia's hand. "We'll face whatever comes together," he said. As they sat there hand in hand, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but with Peter and Isabella by her side, she was ready to face any challenge. What she didn't know was that fate still had one last surprise in store for her. A revelation that would test everything she thought she knew about her past and her future. The next few months were a period of adjustment for everyone. Isabella began to have supervised visits with Alfred, always with Sophia or Peter present. At first, things were awkward and tense, but little by little, father and daughter began to form a cautious bond. Meanwhile, the relationship between Sophia and Peter blossomed. They decided to go slowly, aware that any change in their dynamic would affect Isabella as well. But it was clear to everyone around them that there was a deep and abiding love between them. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves on the trees were beginning to turn red and gold, Sophia received an unexpected call from her former orphanage. "Mrs. Sophia," said the voice on the other end of the line, "this is Sister Maria. I don't know if you remember me. We have important information about your birth parents." Sophia felt the world stop for a moment. After so many years, she had stopped expecting this kind of news. "My parents," she managed to say. "What information?" "We prefer to discuss this in person," Sister Maria replied. "Could you come to the orphanage tomorrow?" That night, Sophia could barely sleep. Peter held her, offering silent comfort as she wondered what revelations awaited her. The next morning, Sophia and Peter left Isabella with Alfred, a sign of the trust that had begun to grow between them, and headed to the orphanage. The grey, austere building had not changed much in the years since Sophia had left. Sister Maria received them in her office, a small, austere room with a crucifix on the wall. "Sophia," the nun said with a gentle smile, "you have grown into a beautiful woman." Sophia nodded, too nervous to speak. Peter squeezed her hand in support. Sister Maria pulled a yellowed folder from her desk. "A few weeks ago we received a letter," she began. It was from a man named Robert Guzman. He claimed to be your biological father. Sophia felt short of breath. My father? But how? Why now? The nun opened the folder and pulled out a letter. Robert explained that he and your mother, Helen, were very young when they had you. They were frightened and without resources, so they made the difficult decision to leave you here. She paused, her eyes full of compassion. He says he spent the last 30 years regretting that decision and searching for you. Sophia listened in silence, tears running down her cheeks. Peter embraced her, offering his strength. There is more, Sister Maria continued. Robert mentioned that he has an inherited medical condition. He wanted you to know in case you or your children might be at risk. Suddenly, everything took on new meaning for Sophia. Her struggle to find her place in the world, her desperate desire to start a family, even her ability to forgive Alfred, all seemed connected to this past she had just discovered. Where is he now? Asked Sophia in a trembling voice. Sister Maria handed her a piece of paper with an address. He lives in the city. He says he'd like to meet you, if you're willing. Sophia looked at the address, then at Peter, who nodded silently, supporting her as he always had. I think I need to see him, Sophia finally said. 2 days later, Sophia stood in front of a modest house in a quiet residential neighborhood. Peter was at her side, Isabella between them, holding her hands. With her heart pounding, Sophia rang the doorbell. After a moment that seemed like an eternity, the door opened. There in front of her stood a man in his 50s, with grey hair and eyes that mirrored her own. Robert Guzman looked at her, his eyes filling with tears. Sophia, he said in a broken voice. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. Without warning, Robert stepped forward and embraced her. After a moment of surprise, Sophia returned his embrace, letting years of unanswered questions and unspoken longings flow between them. When they finally separated, Robert looked at Peter and Isabella curiously. Robert, Sophia said, finding her voice, I would like to introduce you to my family. This is Peter, my partner, and this is Isabella, my daughter. Robert smiled through tears. It's a pleasure to meet you, he said. Then, looking at Isabella, he added softly, I guess that makes me your grandfather. Isabella, always direct, asked, Does that mean I have 2 daddies and a grandpa now? Everyone laughed, the tension of the moment dissipating a bit. That's right, honey, Sophia said, hugging her daughter. Our family just got a little bigger. As they walked into Robert's house, Sophia felt a sense of fullness she had never experienced before. Her life had taken so many turns, she had faced so many challenges, but here she was, surrounded by love on all sides. She knew there would still be obstacles ahead. She would have to navigate this new relationship with her biological father, continue co-parenting Isabella with Alfred, and build a life with Peter. But for the first time, she felt like she had all the pieces of the puzzle of her life. As they sat in Robert's living room, beginning the long process of getting to know each other, Sophia looked around. Peter, the man who had been by her side in her darkest moments. Isabella, the most precious gift of her life. And now Robert, a link to her past and a promise for the future. At that moment, Sophia understood that love comes in many forms, and that family is what you build, not just what you inherit. Her journey had been long and sometimes painful, but it had brought her exactly where she needed to be. As Robert began to tell the story of how he met Sophia's mother, she leaned back on the couch, feeling Peter's arm around her shoulders and Isabella's hand in hers. And for the first time in her life, Sophia felt completely at home.